This is Brenna Quigley, your personal geologist and terroir guide. Join me on a road trip through the geologic history of your favorite wine regions around the world. This is Roadside Terroir. Season 2, Burgundy's Côte d'Or, is made possible by our Season 2 partners, Becky Wasserman and Company, La Palais, and Acker Wines. We're determined to keep this content free and accessible for everyone. We're still actively fundraising for this season and future seasons of the show. To learn more about sponsorship opportunities, please get in touch by emailing us at contact@roadsideterroir.com. If you'd like to support our show personally, please consider becoming an insider or donating to become a Season 2 patron. Insiders and patrons have access to lots of cool stuff, including extra photos, illustrations, and extended interviews with all our guests. To learn more, check out our website, roadsideterroir.com, and don't forget to follow us on Instagram. Please don't drink and drive, and remember to keep your eyes on the road. This episode contains explicit language. This is part 1 of our 2-part first episode for this season. Make sure to come back next week to listen to part 2. After traveling for nearly 24 hours, I'm finally boarding the train in Paris that will take me back to Burgundy for the first time in almost 2 years. This monumental region means so much to me personally, and to so many others around the world. The wine, the rocks, and the people all make me feel both at home and inspired, and I'm filled with excitement and anticipation. All of this is true, but what I'm really wondering right now is, what on earth was I thinking? People write encyclopedias about Burgundy. People spend their entire lives here. Families have spent generations trying to understand this place, and I don't even speak French. Who am I to be telling this story? I'm still discovering this region, along with everyone else I know. I could sit here and worry about this forever, but I'm already on my way, and you're along for the ride. Burgundy is itself a journey of exploration, and this is the story of my experience. Now, our experience. It won't be perfect, and it won't replace any of the invaluable texts already written on the region. Instead, we're going to immerse ourselves in the place. We'll learn from exploring and spending time with the people who live and breathe Burgundy every day. There will be stumbles, sometimes literally, but I do love it there, and I can't wait to share this place with you. I first came to Burgundy in 2016. At the time, I didn't know much about wine, and definitely didn't understand what this place meant to people. But I knew, somehow, that it was significant to be here. I knew the wines were serious and were to be taken seriously. And I knew they were very expensive. So, when I first arrived, I was surprised by how underwhelmed I was. I expected to be blown away by something. I guess maybe I expected something grand, or for the landscape to be dramatic and intense. I expected clarity, and instead, I was abruptly confronted with subtlety. I didn't get it, but I liked it. And the more I tried to understand, the more there was to understand. As we continued exploring different sites and tasting the wines, I was mesmerized by the nuance and the detail of the terroirs, but was of little use in helping to explain what was going on. On this first trip, my soon-to-be dear friend, Paul Wasserman, recognized the strange look of confusion and wonder on my face. Basically, the look of someone who had just entered the rabbit hole. And he invited me back to learn more. For decades, his mother, Becky Wasserman, had been opening her doors to Burgundy lovers from around the world, creating a home for people who loved this place as much as she did. Within just a few weeks, I returned and met Becky. At the time, I didn't fully understand how significant she was to the region as a whole. But it was clear that I was incredibly lucky to experience a bit of this world she had created. And from that moment on, I was hooked. In order to prepare for this season, I wanted to understand what makes this region so significant. So I asked as many people as I could if they could explain it. It feels like something you're just supposed to know, like a simple question that should have a simple answer. But as we'll soon learn, nothing about Burgundy is simple.
Burgundy made people angry.
Here are just a few of the responses I heard, all from people that we'll hear more from this season.
That there is like this innate prestige that's given.
There was a time where I refused to pour a Bourgogne by the glass. Refused.
Fascinating why we keep coming back.
Like it's not just me.
nothing
Like it is
there.
held up on a pedestal, right? Like
100%.
The tattoo says Grand Cru.
It was certainly the first 20 years of life that were really quite difficult themselves.
Artisan.
It's like
20 years, I never drank a Bourgogne.
Like this is part of the region. You would break that apart.
I still think it's almost the opposite.
And it's like you can start to take it apart piece by piece.
Burgundy is all about the confusion, the detail, the nuance, the mystery, and only very recently has it become a sign of wealth or prestige. Choosing an expensive bottle of Burgundy on a wine list is likely to be more a signal of good taste or of obscure knowledge rather than just a show of wealth. And even worse, ordering the wrong bottle of Burgundy, i.e. any wrong combination of producer, vineyard, and vintage, might actually end up making you look more foolish than knowledgeable, which might explain some of the frustration. But the one thing we do know is that in Burgundy, place is everything.
It's something that's just
And I went around all the regions of France, and this is the one that captivated me.
it's
one producer.
place and
Two vineyards,
transparency.
that's it
I
next to one
found the
another. That is what
fascination
Terroir
of
is,
the
and
younger
that's what
growers,
always
of
draws
getting
us
to understand the vineyards I was working with and trying to make the best possible wine, was not replicated in any other region at all.
Burgundy is just a place where it's been championed the most, and where it's the most apparent, but also the most revelatory.
It was only here in Burgundy that people were taking me out into vineyards, showing me the difference in soil between one place and another, talking about how they made each individual wine, and just getting far more enthusiastic about the process of what they were doing than any commercial opportunities.
Whatever you want to call it, whether it's place or terroir or climat or lieu dit or single vineyard, it's actually been the overriding obsession of everyone that makes, sales, or actually drinks Burgundy, and it's been so for several centuries.
Burgundy is where you can clearly understand the impact and the uniqueness of a little piece of our planet. It is, by many accounts, the birthplace of terroir. Over the course of this season, we're going to explore what it means to be able to taste a sense of place by covering every corner of the Côte d'Or. We'll dive into an ancient body of knowledge and winemaking tradition and see how it's been challenged by a changing world. Each episode of this season will focus on a specific leg of our journey, from one village to the next, back into the hills of the Côte, into the kitchens of our friends and favorite restaurants, and deep into the cellars of our winemaking heroes. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Our train is just starting to make its way out of the station, and we have a long ride ahead of us. In order to contemplate the significance of our destination, the Côte d'Or, we first have to understand the basics. And in Burgundy, just the basics can be so complex that understanding them will make you a bit of an expert. Besides the architecture, I don't remember seeing many rocks in Paris. The romantic, sparkling city sits right in the middle of what geologists refer to as the Paris Basin. The Paris Basin is essentially a big bowl of limestone, tilted gently towards the northwest, spilling out into the English Channel via the Seine River. The concentric layers of the Paris Basin limestone extend across north-central France. These layers unite wine regions such as Saumur, Touraine, and Sancerre of the Loire Valley in the west, with Champagne in the northeast, and Burgundy along the fractured outer edge of the basin to the southeast. I'm taking the slow train from Paris today, which leaves from the station in Bercy and hugs the banks of the Seine. There's a faster TGV train, but I prefer the pace of this one, and the time it gives me to reflect and prepare for my arrival into Burgundy. I think about this as we rattle along over hundreds of kilometers of ancient limestone. The city of Paris sits in the core of the Paris Basin, on the youngest layers of sedimentary deposits. The layers get sequentially older towards the edges of the basin, like a set of nested bowls stacked one inside of the other. The rim of each bowl arcs across the country, tracing the same moment in geologic time. The train picks up speed as we leave the final traces of urban sprawl behind us and enter into the foggy, mythical French countryside. Quiet, quaint clusters of buildings are nestled between expansive fields which extend up gentle slopes capped with patches of dark green forests. Everyone loves to point out that all of this was once at the bottom of the ocean, and it's true. Around 200 million years ago, the supercontinent Pangaea began to break up and rift apart. At this time, Earth's climate was considerably warmer than it is today, meaning there were no glaciers at the poles and sea level was much higher. As the new continents drifted apart, they were flooded with warm, salty seawater. These shallow seas were the perfect environment for the formation of limestone coral reefs. Over time, sea level continued to rise and fall. New species emerged and others went extinct. Depositional environments and conditions changed gradually, and slightly different geologic materials were deposited, one on top of the next, methodically recording the events of the Earth millions of years before the beginning of time. As the train careens through the countryside and our souls metamorphose from city slickers to country mice, our path takes us deeper and deeper in geologic time. First, we dive into the Cretaceous chalks of only about 70 million years ago that wind their way up to Champagne. Next, we'll enter into the upper Jurassic layers, with names like Kimmeridgian and Portlandian that have become so synonymous to the terroirs of Chablis that we often forget are simply geologic ages. Finally, we'll make our way into the layers of the Middle Jurassic, approximately 170 million years old and home to some of the greatest vineyards on the planet. An astute student of geology might have noticed that according to the law of original horizontality, which literally and simply states that sediments are initially deposited in flat layers, one on top of another, you'd expect that these older layers would be buried hundreds of kilometers below the young deposits found in the center of the basin. And you would be right. The Jurassic-aged limestones were originally buried by the younger deposits and seemingly lost to the surface of the Earth forever. But around 65 million years ago, Africa, which had been slowly migrating northwards for millions of years, finally crashed into Europe, forming both the Alps and the Pyrenees Mountains, and sending ripple effects through both tectonic plates. Faults splintered across the crust, and the edges of the Paris Basin were pushed up from the south and east, exposing the ancient rings of limestone from below. This tectonic event accelerated the process of climatic cooling, and the seas drained from the basin. Today, the Paris Basin sits well above sea level, and several rivers carve into the layers of limestone as they make their way towards the ocean. As our train nears Dijon, the topography begins to build, ever so slightly. The gentle cuestas get a bit steeper and broken up, and you might even catch a glimpse of some white limestone cliffs in the distance. Today, these ancient limestone rocks are exposed to a very different world. They weather and break down in the presence of air, water, and microbial life to form soil. They interact with a modern and changing climate, as well as the new forms of life that inhabit the surface, including us. In comparison to the geology, the human history of the Côte d'Or seems to happen in the blink of an eye, just a mere 2,000 or so years of interactions between us, the land, and the vine. But, of course, we aren't rocks, and 2,000 years of history and tradition in the world of wine is truly exceptional. And not an easy thing to summarize quickly.
Right, how far back do you want to go?
As far back as you want.
Luckily, we have some help. This is Jasper Morris, author of Inside Burgundy, the most up-to-date and comprehensive book on the region. He's a master of wine with a background in history from Oxford. In 2018, he became one of the most respected Burgundy reviewers on the scene as well, but we try not to hold it against him.
We know now that there was the odd bit of a sort of lifestyle block of wine planted by individual Romans, but it's still very muddy when the vineyards really first came here, and then is typical of every area.
Although some people think vine cultivation in Burgundy might go as far back as the Celts, it is generally believed that the Romans were the first to bring vines to the area. They conquered the Gauls right around 52 BC and brought with them vines, grapes, and wine-drinking traditions inspired by the ancient Greeks. In 2008, the oldest physical proof of a vineyard in the Côte d'Or was found in Gevrey-Chambertin, which dates back to the 1st century AD.
So they're planting everywhere, and sort of probably mostly in the plain because it's just easier on flat land. And even nowadays, if you look at...
The Romans were famously enthralled with wine, and all levels of society were known to drink it. Many had their own vineyards and would even use fine wines for medicinal purposes. Anthony Hansen points out in his book, simply titled Burgundy, that there is written evidence of the region's renown throughout the Roman Empire as far back as the year 312 AD. At the start of the 5th century, the Western Roman Empire fell and was invaded by Germanic tribes from the north.
The arrival of the Burgundies, the tribe, which isn't particularly relevant.
The Burgundies, or maybe it's Bourgogne, I'm not really sure, were the first of the Germanic tribes to inhabit the Côte d'Or. They aren't particularly relevant to this story, other than that they gave their name to the region. During this time, many Roman traditions were erased, but wine and grape growing were not among them. Jasper goes on to suggest that it appears the Burgundies made a point to maintain both the physical presence of the vineyards and their coveted status. Along with most of Europe at this moment, the Burgundies were Christian, and wine, of course, is inherently linked to Christianity. It is portrayed as an example of Christ's miracles and plays a central role in the Eucharist, or Holy Communion. The Franks came after the Burgundies, and the famed Dukes of Burgundy after that. At this point, Burgundy was huge. It stretched all the way up to the Netherlands. It wasn't yet a part of the growing Kingdom of France, but was instead its own duchy, the slightly unfortunate term used for a big group of dukes.
Obviously, the church has a major role to play in that.
Around the beginning of the 7th century, we see the first examples of vineyards gifted to the church by the nobility. One of the very first was the Abbé de Bèze in 640 AD. If you're a drinker of Grand Crus, your ears probably just perked up.
And people tend to say, weren't the monks clever? They discovered all the Grand Crus. But they planted loads of different things. And it's only the ones which were good which have survived.
The monks are the poster boys of the legend of Burgundy. As the story goes, the monks were the first to identify the greatness of the individual vineyards. Over the centuries, they tended to the vines, made the wine, and carefully began to understand the nuances between one plot to the next. Some reports go as far as saying that the monks actually tasted the soil in order to determine which sites were the greatest.
This is happening during the Middle Ages. There's no sort of really specific time, but even by the sort of 13th, 14th century, you're beginning to get a slight feel of this.
So this is sort of happening at the moment of the talk is always of the Cistercian monks,
Yes.
which I noticed you don't use that term. Is there a reason?
Well, it isn't just Cistercian. It so happens that this region is predominantly Cistercian, but not uniquely so.
Okay.
The dukes and the monks worked together to establish the reputation of Burgundian wine throughout Europe. In his book, Anthony Hansen points out that Burgundian wine was poured at the coronations for both Charles VI in 1321 and Philippe VI in 1328.
I think one of the interesting questions is we're in an area which has lots of stone, the old limestone, it's absolutely crucial. And that also means in certain vineyards, as you plough your soil, what you do with all the bits of stones which are clattering the place up. And the answer is you build stone walls which differentiate between one vineyard and another. And even where the roads are built, it's normally the case that the change in terroir, and perhaps even as straightforwardly as the change in geology underneath, follows the lines where the roads are put and the walls are put.
Looking out the train window, you can see the patchwork of the slope. Many of these patches are delineated by these stone walls. Jasper's pointing out that as these walls were built, they naturally began to designate unique terroirs. These distinct pieces of the slope separated themselves out by the quality, consistency, and distinctive personalities of the wines they produced. For hundreds of years, the vineyards of Burgundy were owned by either the church or the nobility, but with an increasingly involved bourgeoisie.
Things are just slowly becoming a bit more intense. The church is losing its grip, church plus aristocracy. So you're beginning to get more of sort of the upper bourgeoisie, first of all managing it and then taking over. And then dramatically you have the French Revolution, where the vineyards get bought up and sold.
Immediately following the French Revolution, vineyards were classified as national goods and sold off primarily to the upper middle class themselves.
The things that Napoleon did, it's an incredible legacy. And of course it makes everything metric. It gives us the communes, which we didn't have before and not in the same way. It gives us a huge bureaucratic organization.
One major piece of this bureaucracy was the Code Napoleon. This dictated that inheritance would no longer solely go to the firstborn son, but would now be split up equally amongst all living sons. Sadly, it would be a long time before daughters were considered worthy of inheritance. And so, with each successive generation, the already minuscule, precious, and prized vineyards of the Côte d'Or, tucked within their monastic ancient walls, were broken up into tinier and tinier pieces. This explains how the names of these famed vineyards precede their ownership. Vineyards such as the Clos de Bez, Montrachet, Genévrier, and the Clos Saint-Jacques exist as historic entities. If you're lucky enough to own a few rows in the Clos de Bez, you wouldn't dream of calling it anything other than Clos de Bez. The uniquely Burgundian term climat describes this idea of historic, individual terroirs. To the vineyards, the changing ownership of each plot and parcel is just a blip in a history that extends for thousands of years.
We have a proportion of names which are due to religious owners, a proportion of names due to secular owners, and then others for all sorts of different things.
And so it would be at that time that reputations started getting tied to areas.
Whether reputations did, I think that may come a little bit later, but you would still have names because people want to say, I'm going off to this field today, and so you've got to have some sort of name for it. Right. So you'll name it for whoever owns it or any other particular characteristic of it.
When are the first signs of there being quality reputation tied to places and names?
To villages, that builds steadily across the centuries. Single vineyards, there are just a small number of them that you can detect even by the 18th century. And you get just steadily more examples of it. Mm-hmm. And it's really the 19th century where it becomes a significant item.
In the 19th century, specifically in 1855, a man named Dr. Jules Laval published the first comprehensive classification of vineyards in the Côte d'Or. Laval was a naturalist and a doctor in Dijon, manager of the botanical gardens, a member of the Geological Society of France, and basically the first official Burgundy geek in history. The publication was incredibly detailed, with a map, pictures, and descriptions of the wines from the greatest vineyards, which he called têtes de cuvées. The classification highlighted the relationship between the great vineyards and their historic names, and it remains relevant and influential today. This final stretch of the ride between Dijon and Beaune is my favorite. A few minutes outside the city and the vineyards begin. The term Côte d'Or literally translates to golden slope, and when you catch it at the right moment, the long, narrow, east-facing slope beams with reflected sunlight. The train tracks parallel the slope, which is continuous except for the staggered narrow valleys, or combes, that cut back into it. Tucked beneath these valleys and atop their respective alluvial fans are the villages, each famous in their own right and some more famous than their neighbors. We quickly cruise past Gevrey-Chambertin, Moret-Saint-Denis, Chambol-Musigny, Vaughan-Romanée, and Neuilly-Saint-Georges. Each of these villages had originally just one name, Gevrey, Moret, Chambol, etc., and was only later granted the ability to add the hyphenated second bit, referencing each village's most famed vineyard. Burgundy lovers are as familiar with these names and designations as they are with the names of their own family members. But just in case you aren't quite there yet, let me attempt to quickly break it down. Burgundy is the region, in terms of both history and wine. As a wine region, it includes the satellite regions of Chablis and the Grand Auxerrois to the north, the Côte Chalonnaise and the Mâconnais to the south, and even Beaujolais to the south of that. But those are conversations for another day. Our focus for this season is specifically on the Côte d'Or, the famed core of Burgundy, so famous, in fact, that it is sometimes mistakenly assumed to comprise the entire region. The Côte d'Or is technically a department within the region of Burgundy, and is essentially one semi-continuous cuesta, with hard cap rocks at the top of the slope covered in forests, and a long, gradual concave slope stretching out into the valley. This classic Burgundian slope profile is steeper towards the top, with shallow to negligible topsoil that becomes deeper with accumulated clay towards the bottom. The Saône River parallels the slope at its base, and while the present-day banks of the river are at least 15 kilometers, or nearly 9 to 10 miles away, the silty sediments from past floods begin to take over from the limestone slope wash as the slope flattens out completely at the bottom. The Côte d'Or is then split up into two main halves. The northern half is the Côte de Nuits, and the southern the Côte de Beaune. The vineyards beyond the crest of the slope are called the Haute Côte, or the high slopes, and the flat plains at the bottom of the slope are classified as generic Bourgogne wines. The Côte de Nuits is famous for producing what many believe to be the best examples of Pinot Noir in the world. The Côte de Beaune is similarly famous for producing the best examples of Chardonnay, but also produces a significant amount of truly exceptional Pinot Noir. The main vineyards along the slope are designated first according to their village, and then to their hierarchy. Good vineyards expressive of their village are designated as village, great vineyards as premier cru, and the most exceptional vineyards as grand cru. We'll get into the details and the politics of this later, but for now, you can just remember the hierarchy of Bourgogne, village, premier cru, and grand cru. And remember that it's closely tied to price. Let me know when you're starting to feel confused. It's the first sign that you're beginning to understand Burgundy. Luckily, our train is pulling into the station in the beautiful medieval walled city of Beaune, and it's just about time for lunch. The train arrives into Beaune just as the sun begins to stretch out from the clouds. I'm met at the train station by Paul Wasserman. Paul was my first guide through Burgundy. He grew up here and has been tasting Grand Cru Burgundy since he was a little kid, literally. He's one of the few people who can call themselves a true insider in Burgundy, while also understanding the context of the region from the outside. With only minimal complaining, he's agreed to give us the insider's tour. We load up the car, grab my rental car, and find a parking spot just outside of the old stone wall that marks the historic center of the city. Just beyond the wall is a modern, paved, one-way road that makes a complete loop along the outer edge of the wall, kind of like a racetrack.
And now we reach one of the larger streets in Beaune, the Boulevard Périphérique, basically a circular boulevard that runs around Beaune, hugging the second fortifications of Beaune. These were built starting in the 14th century.
Locals know how to take the side streets to navigate the maze around the loop, but I still find myself driving the full 5-minute loop back around the circle whenever I miss a turn. We make a quick detour after we park, to wander around some of the little cobblestone streets within the city center, to grab a coffee and see some sights on our way to lunch.
Moving on. Beaune's a small city, so everything's in walking distance, especially the better restaurants. We can walk everywhere, and most of it's medieval, and the layout of the streets hasn't changed since, I think, the 13th century. So it's full of little crooked medieval houses and streets that are super narrow and scary to drive on, but it's really, really cute.
The nice thing about Beaune is that most of the streets seem to loop back on themselves. Sometimes, when I'm not sure where I'm going, I just keep walking and eventually stumble upon something I recognize that will lead me back to the city's centerpiece, the Hospice de Beaune.
The Place is Beaune's crown jewel. It's the Hospice of Beaune. It was founded in 1443 by Chancellor Nicolas Rolin and his wife Guidoine de Salins, basically as a refuge and a hospital for the poor. Absolutely beautiful 15th century French Gothic architecture. Since the 1800s, it has been in part funded by the famous yearly wine auction of the Hospice.
The auction was established in 1859 and is considered to be the oldest charity wine auction in the world. Every November, people come from all over to celebrate with the region. There are tastings, lunches, parties, and parades. It's a huge deal for Beaune, and also sets the price for Burgundy for the following year. It's Saturday in Beaune, which means the weekly farmers market is in full swing. Dozens of vendors set up shop right in front of the beautiful Hospice. Each station is overflowing with fresh, seasonal produce. Baskets of chanterelles, obscure varieties of tomatoes, freshly sliced charcuterie. The sight of it, plus the sounds of the local chatter amongst the ringing bells of the Hospice, is something out of a fairy tale. This little place is where world-famous winemakers come to meet up with friends, keep up with colleagues, and pick up their groceries for the week. Our move is to hang out in front of the Saint-Romain coffee stand. We taste through some of the owner Matt's freshest roasts and wait to see who we might run into. The French take their groceries very seriously, so even though the market's small, everyone has their own favorite spots to get this or that. But it's always very specific. You have to get tomatoes from Loubet over here, but the mushrooms from the spot across the way. Don't get meat from this guy, he's a jerk, get it over there. But you have to get here early if you want the chicken. Pastries from here, croissants from there, baguettes from here, and on and on. You could spend years just learning the ins and outs of the market, and deeply enjoy every minute of it. There's always a sense of, I guess, relaxed excitement at the market. And I think it's because everyone is on a few different missions at once. They're here to socialize, but they also have a job to do in order to pick up everything they need before the market closes. You see, when you're this deep in the French countryside, everything is closed on Sundays. This time tomorrow, the streets will be silent. Almost every shop and grocery store will be closed, and nobody will be working. Instead, Burgundians relax with their families, get together with friends for long Sunday lunches, and they don't look at their emails. Sundays are just about as sacred to the French as lunchtime.
It's super cute with all the vegetable and fruit stalls on the outside, and in that building, one of my very favorite restaurants in Beaune. The owners are friends and lovely. It's a favorite of locals and tourists. One pretty building right in front of us. You'll find the Musée du Vin, and which is a favorite of both sides.
As we walk through the streets on our way to lunch, Paul continues to point out all of his favorite spots. But I can't help but be drawn to the stones that line the walls of the oldest buildings. They're always limestone and almost always from right here. We'll see when we get to the vineyards that there's clear evidence of ancient quarries amongst some of the most famous vineyards of the Côte d'Or. Take a moment to run your hands over the rocks and look closely to see what you can discover. Tiny fossils of sea lilies, little oysters, and evidence of ripples from the sea floor from over 100 million years ago. Consider where each rock came from. Which vineyard? Think of what it's been through, and who would have brought it here. With this in mind, we meander our way out of the city, beyond the wall and across the racetrack, to arrive at one of my favorite restaurants in Beaune. La Dilettante. La Dilettante is, in my opinion, perfectly charming. It's tiny and crowded and warm, and you're always greeted with a smile. It's owned by Lolo, who is French, and his wife Rika, who is Japanese. Lolo is the former owner of one of my other favorite restaurants in Beaune, Cave Madeleine. The food at La Dilettante is simple and delicious. Miso soup, croque madame, an excellent selection of special charcuterie. If you can catch Lolo at the Saturday market, he always knows the best places to go for absolutely everything.
And we decided to do something more casual, a shorter menu, more in the spirit of, the wine bars, natural wine bars around France. There is a lot of natural wine, which does attract a lot of the younger crowds. But there's also quite a few classics. He sources his produce extremely well. Cave Madeleine does, and that's something that stayed here. And even though a lot of it's charcuterie or cheese, with Cave Madeleine is probably the best source food in Beaune. It's lovely, great wine, it's fun.
The ambiance here is friendly and casual, but they also have a seriously deep wine cellar. The wine list goes from classic and profound all the way to the outer fringes of the natural wine world, and Lolo is passionate about it all. This is one of those places where you can't help but peek around the nearby tables to see what everyone else is drinking.
There's a really nice community in Beaune. It's minorly competitive community, which, given how sought after the wines are, is actually pretty wonderful. There's no fist fights in the restaurants. It feels good. You go out and you see people drinking other people's wines all the time and drinking blind, and especially the young people.
After lunch, we continue our tour of Beaune with another significant piece of Burgundy's history, the winding underground cellars of Maison Joseph Drouhin. Drouhin is one of the major négociants of the Côte d'Or, most of whom are based right here in Beaune. I asked Paul to explain the history of the négociants a bit, and big surprise, it's complicated.
You have to go back a tiny bit in history before the négociants appeared. So the organization of trades into corporation goes back to the Roman times, but in France it goes back to the 13th century. You don't have the right to work.
I'm going to spare us another deep dive into history and see if we can jump ahead a bit.
Court cases, etc. But towards the end of the 1600s, there appears a new profession called the commissionaries, les commissionnaires. And they were acting on behalf of the buyers as opposed to the sellers. And very quickly, they're buying wine, and not just wine, but also vineyards. And that's the birth of the négociants.
Let's pause here for a second. I want to point out that the term négociant is a bit tricky. Technically, a négociant is someone who purchases grapes, or even finished wine, and then sells it under their own label. And this is typically how most of these big houses got started. However, today, most of the big négociants in the Côte d'Or are also the largest landowners in the region.
And the first négociant house was Champy. It was founded in 1720. Very quickly after that, in 1731, was Bouchard. But the invention of the glass bottle is just around that time. So basically, there really is no opportunity for direct sales except through the trade. And the négociant becomes the merchant for Burgundy. And this lasted for a very long time.
This is a key point. Initially, it wasn't possible for individual domaines to bottle, market, sell, export, etc., their own wines. So the négociants played a huge role in supporting the wine industry in the region. And because they were merchants, they also encouraged the reputation of the quality of Burgundian wine around the world.
The overall quality was impressive to brilliant. Some in the 60s, 70s, 80s didn't fare as well. And that's when the reputation of the négociant really started to crumble, especially with all these domaine bottled wines that were starting to pop up.
A few significant domaines started bottling their own wines in 1934, but were slowed down a bit by World War II. Following the war, they began to do so again, and others followed.
We saw very talented domains, Jaillet, for example, but tons of others. Lafarge, de Monty, Bachelet, Burguet. Bise had been bottling wine for a long time, and those were extraordinary. Dujac, Pousse d'Or, Angers. The availability of top-notch Domaine bottled Burgundy certainly put things in perspective, but it's also a general period of lesser wine, not just in Burgundy with the négociants, but in France at large. I think it was the first signs of chemical farming.
This was a necessary shift in the structure of the wine industry in Burgundy. Several big négociants had to move aside in order to make room for the ambitious domaines who were ready to do their own thing.
So it's not a bad word. It was a bad word, and it shouldn't have been a bad word. A bunch of them remain highly qualitative.
A few of the remaining very well-respected négociants in the Côte d'Or include Bouchard, Jadot, Fevlet, and of course Drouin, where we've just arrived.
Now we present in 120 countries, which is huge. And it's the same number of appellations than most, so it's, yeah, it's a lot of work every Monday when we taste the wines.
You taste through the wines every Monday?
Every Monday, every 2 weeks the red and the other week the white, because it's too many.
Our host at Drouin is Lorraine Boss, the first of the 5th generation of Drouins to join the family business.
It started with my great-great-grandfather, Joseph, in 1880. Started a little negotiation, buying grapes and wines from different regions in France. His son took over, Maurice, in 1918, and he's the one who started buying vineyards. And then his son Robert, my grandfather, took over in 1957. Philippe, the eldest, you know him, who is taking care of the vineyards both in France and Oregon. My mom, who is the winemaker, same, both in France and Oregon. Then Laurent, I don't know if you know, is in the US. And Frédéric, the last one, is the CEO. So I'm the eldest of the 5th generation. Yeah, little pressure. And we wait for the others, but they're young, so...
Walking through the cellars of a Grand Négociant in Beaune feels like stepping back in time. Altogether, the cellars extend for miles, in an underground maze just beneath the city.
So this is the cellar linked to what we saw upstairs, so from the 12th, 13th century. Oh yeah, they're working in the cellar. So.
Is that above or below? Oh.
All right. Oh no, she's okay. That's not for us. And then we're going down, and we're going to 15th century. But it's funny to see because when the first part of the cellar it's from 12th century and it's very high, and here it's much lower. So this second part was used by the Dukes of Burgundy and the Kings of France.
The Drouin cellars even contain the rare remnants of the original Roman fortifications, which are some of the oldest pieces of history in the city.
This is from maybe 4th century. It's the walls of the city in Beaune. The shape of the wall is like fish bones. And here is where Maurice, during the war, built a wall, fake one. And that's how they saved few bottles during the occupation.
Their story also takes us into the next chapter of the history of Burgundy, which started off bad and got worse. From the end of the 19th century and into the 20th century, the vineyard suffered from disease, including, of course, phylloxera, the louse that almost wiped all European vineyards completely off the map. This, combined with a major financial crisis and then 2 world wars, left all of France, including the vineyards, in a state of disrepair.
So Maurice, my great-grandfather, was a resistant. He went to jail because of that for 3 or 6 months. The second time, he was a really good friend with a German soldier because he saved his life during the First War. So during the Second War, this soldier, German one, said, "Oh, Maurice, you have to leave. They are coming for you, and this time it won't be jail, it's going to be quick. You really have to escape and leave because your life is in danger. So he knew the cellars like his pocket. And he thought, maybe there's one door, there won't be behind it, so it's coming out in front of the office, in the middle of the two buildings. And he went to the Hospice de Beaune. At that time, he was the vice president, so they knew him, and they said, yeah, of course, you're welcome. And then I hid him in a very small room, and he stayed there for 3 months. They were bringing him food and water. And Mother Superior from the Hospice de Beaune was going to church at the same time as Maurice's wife to keep the exchange between Maurice and his wife, because he was from June to September, so before harvest. So you had to keep taking care of the vineyards and the cellar. And so they were writing letters and very smart way of communicating. And that's how they keep the Maison Joseph Drouin staying alive. So thanks to the hospice. So to thank the hospice for saving his life, he gave almost half of the estate he had at that time. And when you do a donation, it's when you die that it's given. So in 1960, he died and they got a few vineyards. Beaune Premier Cru, many different Beaune Premier Cru. And so they do a cuvée Maurice Drouin during the auction. And we try to buy it every year, the whole cuvée, but sometimes people say, they know it's really good, so they buy something. Yeah. So that's why we cuvée Maurice in this cellar, because it means history, so it's nice to see. So this is the freedom door. The door that Maurice went through and saved his life, going to the Hospice de Beaune. Yeah.
The Drouin family is one of the most respected families in Burgundy, for several reasons, even beyond their impressive historic relevance. The wines themselves have remained consistently excellent over time.
Drouin is pretty remarkable because of their history and, again, how it's gone from generation to generation.
This is Daniel Jonas, famous former sommelier and the Burgundy expert who founded the La Palais festivals that bring together Burgundy producers with professionals and consumers every year in celebration of the region.
In spite of buying grapes, in addition to owning some glorious appellations, they have the most remarkably consistent style of wines. Drouin has been Drouin. Their wines are just beautifully perfumed and elegant and not always the deepest in color and very textural. I think it's a more sophisticated experience for the wine lover. They don't slap you in the face. You have to get to know the wines a little bit before you really appreciate them. They don't come at you.
And even more impressive, they're also particularly environmentally conscious. They started working with lightweight glass to reduce their carbon footprint and have gone beyond organic farming into biodynamics. It's honestly hard to imagine biodynamic farming on this scale. How much work it must be to farm 80 hectares, or almost 200 acres, with this much care and attention. But more on that later.
Thanks to Philippe, we already organic, biodynamic, thinking about nature and the environment. Recycle in the office, think about what we use as boxes and the glasses. We already have our bottles are designed for us because they're a little bit lighter than the normal Burgundian bottles. If the big ones don't act first, no one will follow. So.
Now that we've explored the human history of Beaune, we're ready to get our boots on the ground and into some vineyards. Next week, in part 2 of this episode, we will dig into the vineyards and varied terroirs of Beaune while uncovering the history of biodynamic farming in the Côte d'Or. Stay tuned. This episode is dedicated to the memory of Becky Wasserman Hone and to her husband, Russell Hone, who have showed the world the meaning of Burgundy, one home-cooked meal at a time. This episode is made possible by our Season 2 sponsors, Becky Wasserman & Co., La Palais, and Acker Wines. Want to celebrate the release of Season 2 with us? We'll be pouring at the La Palais Grand Tastings in New York on March 12th and in Los Angeles on March 19th. See you there. Roadside Terroir is hosted and produced by me, Brenna Quigley, recording and sound engineering by Nick Canepa, and original music and sound design by Jeff Alvarez. This season wouldn't be possible without the support from all of you. Thank you for listening, sharing, emailing, and supporting us however you can. Check out our website, roadsideterroir.com, to learn how you can stay in touch and how to support this season by becoming a Roadside Insider or a Season 2 patron. If you want to learn more about the history of Burgundy, we highly recommend checking out some of the comprehensive reference books on the region by Jasper Morris, Anthony Hansen, Clive Coates, and Matt Kramer. Thank you to our guests, Jasper Morris, Paul Wasserman, Daniel Jonas, Lauren Boss, David Qua, Jean-Claude Rateau, and some extra cameos by Raj Parr, Christina Rasmussen, Abe Schoner, Nina West, and Daniel Callan. Thank you to Jerusha Frost, Issa Islami, Summer Stabe, Michael Sager, Julia Wiggin, Francoise Vanier, and everyone else who helped make this episode a reality.
Ça fait 40 ans. Ouais.
40 years of biodynamics.
Ouais. Ça sent la vanille, c'est extraordinaire l'odeur du sol. L'odeur du sol, c'est les champignons.
You should smell chemical classic. It's true. The difference in smell is, and also the looseness.
Ça, c'est bon signe. Oui, tout à fait.